Hey Wargamers, Games Workshop released a preview of a few different Forge World units today, one of them being the Y'Vahra battlesuit for Tau Empire. Now, this is a Forge World unit. We don't have rules for it in leaks or anything like that. We're just getting a look at it now. And it's not even going to be released along with 8th edition. Instead, it's going to be in a special Forge World index for Xenos that we think is going to be up for pre-orders at least by the end of the month. So it's coming soon, but not quite as soon as a lot of people would have liked. So let's dive into it, see what the Y'Vahra is going to look like in 8th edition, how it's going to play, and what types of options you're going to want to take with it. If you want to follow along with me, there's a link in the description below that shows you that preview. So it has all the rules right there. You can look at it yourself. But also in the description below is a link to a video that I have detailing a giveaway that I'm doing in celebration of 8th edition and also hitting a subscriber milestone for the channel. So go there, enter to win some free stuff, and subscribe and like the video while you're at it. All right, so let's get into the Y'Vahra. Basically, it looks a lot like it did before. A lot of the things are similar, just not quite the same. The movement, ballistic skill, and attacks characteristics are scaling based on the wounds. Of course, the movement and ballistic skill are things we really care about. The attacks really don't matter for this guy. So he has a maximum of 4 attacks, which means that, you know, at best you're probably going to be hitting once and maybe wounding then, but yeah, so it's basically not really worth it. But movement can go up to 18 inches, which is a nice buff. Of course, he loses his ability to fly and boost and reposition that way. So, you know, it's a compromise, but he can consistently move up to 18 inches, which is really nice. And then his ballistic skill took a hit. Now his maximum ballistic skill is hitting on 4s instead of 3s. And that sucks. But I think there's a few ways we can work around that and make that still workable, especially given the amount of firepower that this guy's going to be carrying around with him. Other types of attributes: weapon skill of 5 up, strength 6, toughness 7, wounds 14, leadership 9, and a 2 up save. So the standard Riptide profile. There's nothing different about it aside from the scaling attributes that we talked about. So there it is. Of course, it can take a shielded missile drone, or a couple shielded missile drones, or a couple of shield drones. Now, both of those options are going to have a hard time keeping up with the Y'Vahra if it keeps moving around. But yeah, there's some options to deal with that, and we'll talk about that later. It comes in at 20 power. We don't know what the actual point value will be. We'll have to wait for that book to hit later this month or early next month in order to actually know what the point value is. But at power, it's 20 power. It's a 20 power level thing, which puts it right smack dab in between a Riptide and a Storm Surge. So hopefully this gives us some better firepower than a Riptide, and not quite as much firepower as a Storm Surge, but at a little bit cheaper cost. So I'm pretty excited about that power level rating. I think that's reasonable, and I think it does a lot of damage. You know, the difference here between a 17 power level Riptide and a 20 power level Y'Vahra is just 3 power level, which is the cost of a 5-man Fire Warrior squad. So when you think about it like that, would you rather have a Y'Vahra or a Riptide and 5 Fire Warriors? It's an easy call. So I think this guy's really set up to do well, and I think he's going to be a frequent inclusion in a lot of Tau armies. Now to the good stuff. What are the weapons? Well, it has ionic discharge cannon, just like it did before. The standard profile on that is 12 inches, heavy 3, strength 8, AP -3 with 1 damage. So kind of similar to what it had before. And then it has a special rule that replaces the haywire rule, where if it's firing at a vehicle, anytime that you roll a 6 to wound, it suffers an additional mortal wound. Now, you can amp this up by using the Nova Charge profile, moving it from heavy 3 to moving it from heavy 3 to heavy 3d3. So you have a maximum of 9 potential shots now. strength 10, so that's an increase of 2, minus 3, and then 3 damage. So not only are you getting potentially 3 times as many shots, you're increasing the damage, the strength a little bit, and increasing the damage a lot. In addition to that, the new Haywire rule goes from being just 1 mortal wound to D3 mortal wounds on a roll of a 6 to wound. So suddenly you're starting to see that there's an immense potential for damage, especially at things like Land Raiders, Knights, other super heavies. This can really do a lot of damage. Now, the trade-off, of course, is at short range. The Y'Vahra isn't very durable in a lot of ways, but it can hold in there, and I think it's going to be able to land a punch or two. Shooting, not in close combat, obviously. I think it's going to be able to land a punch or two and make its points back pretty easily, especially when we consider its next weapon, the Plasma Flamer. That has, again, a standard and a Nova charge profile. No longer is there like the 2 rotations or anything like that. There's no longer, it's just doubling out without Nova charging. But the standard profile is, of course, 8 inches because it's a flamer. Heavy 2d6, strength 6, minus 2 AP, 3 damage. So that's pretty good. I like that. That's pretty solid. That's a solid flamer. Strength 6, it's going to be wounding most infantry, most Space Marines on, on a 3, which isn't great. But then it has minus 2 AP, and I think the AP is, I've said this multiple times, AP and damage and volume of fire is really where this game is at. So this flamer does a good job. 2d6 shots, right? That's pretty good. Now you can Nova charge that to make it 3d6, which really, when you compare the benefit of getting an additional d6 on your flamer versus 3 times the number of the ionic discharge cannon shots, I think the clear winner is that you should almost always go for the cannon over Nova charge as opposed to the flamer, just because you're not, you're getting 50% increase in output as opposed to, 200% increase in output. So I think that's pretty good. The flechette dischargers have been replaced now with a 6-inch pistol D6 strength 4 weapon, which is kind of fun, like it's a pistol, but it functions similarly. That will work fine. You can use that when you get charged. You can shoot that if you get charged and still, do a couple wounds that way. And I think that's really going to be the place that we see the Y'Vahra actually doing some damage in close combat. But who knows? He might land a punch or two too. And then, yeah, it has special rules for the greater good. It has all the normal drone special rules as far as how they work. The shield generator basically is a 5-up invulnerable save, increasing to a 4-up invulnerable save within 12 inches or in close combat, just like it was before. And then the Nova reactor is a little different. Of course, it's lost the ability to do any type of movement ability or anything like that. It just has 3 different options. It has a Nova charge for its weapon. It has a Nova charge for its invulnerable save, just like before. And it also retains the ability to leave the battlefield like it did before, but it works slightly differently. I'll read it to you just so that we're clear. It says, at the start of the movement phase, the Y'Vahra may be removed from play and set up in the sky. At the beginning of your next movement phase, you may set the Y'Vahra anywhere on the battlefield as long as it is more than 9 inches away from an enemy unit. Now, that's good, right? I can see that being really useful if you're holding your Y'Vahra back in your baseline, along your gun line, and it's turn 4, you want to get Linebreaker, you don't have anything left, put him up in the sky, put him down over on the enemy's deployment zone and get Linebreaker just like that. Easy peasy. There's not ongoing reserves anymore. There's nothing that really allows this type of movement to happen with other units, and so this is something unique and gives you a unique tactical advantage in some ways. But it's not giving you the same type of advantage that it used to, right? Things can still fall back out of combat now, and so the old rule really wouldn't be as advantageous. So this makes sense. It works well, but it's not don't get as excited about it as you were about the old rule. It's good, it's just not quite as good, but the same old rule really wouldn't be as good anyway, so that's fine. The thing that's weird about this is it doesn't have Manta Strike. That means that this unit, this battlesuit, cannot deep strike in. It has to start on the board, and it has to start in your gun line, which means it's going to be vulnerable at first, but a lot of units are faster moving, so maybe that vulnerability will be brief, and it might actually give your opponent pause and make them not want to come quite as close. They might want to wait for the Y'Vahra to be dead before they approach you, which is good for you. But it can't Manta Strike, which means that it can't benefit from a homing beacon, which means that it can't come in, it can't deep strike on the board and then use its flamer right away. Because it has to, if it comes in using this new escape rule, it has to be more than 9 inches away, and the flamer is only 8-inch range. So there's no way that you can come in on the board and flamer something right away, which is discouraging, but I guess that's fine. The trick will be then just making sure that it survives and is able to deliver those blows. You have to maneuver it effectively. And yeah, so there's that. I think overall, the weapons loadout here is great and it can do a lot of damage. It just takes a little bit more thought to actually use it effectively, which, you know, the old version didn't necessarily require as much forethought or sophisticated tactics to make that happen, and so I'm okay with that. I'm okay with things that are good being challenging to use, and I think most people would be too, right? Nobody wants a win button, right? It can take 2 support systems, and I think these are really important here because especially since the ionic discharge cannon and I guess the flamer weapon too are both heavy weapons. Well, the flamer automatically hits, but the cannon is a heavy weapon, and so it's going to have -1 to hit when you move. And so you're going to want to take a target lock on this guy to avoid that issue. That way you can move and shoot and use all the advantages that the suit gives you to their fullest. So there's target lock. Target lock is going to be over auto include. And then you really have 2 different options. You can either go for a stimulant injector, which is going to nullify potentially some of these auto wounds that you take on, these mortal wounds that you take on from Nova charging. And I think that's actually not a bad idea because this is going to be a target and you want to use all the tools that you can to make sure that this guy stays alive. Now you can also kind of go a little bit the opposite way. Instead of being defensive, you could go offensive and use the advanced targeting system to increase the armor penetration value of each of its weapons by 1. So instead of being a -3 AP on the cannon, it's going to be -4, which is really going to, you know, wreck a lot of people's days. And then the flamer could be -3 instead of -2, which again is really good. So I'm not quite sure how it's going to fall as to which one is better, but my gut tells me that having that stimulant injector probably is going to be worth it just to help keep its mobility up and its ballistic skill up a little bit longer at the end of the game. So that's it. Right. Of course, it has the keywords for Tau, and it's a battlesuit, monster, jetpack, fly, and it's a Y'Vahra. So those are the keywords. Overall, I think this is going to be a great component in a lot of armies. I think you're going to see a ton of them, but it's not quite as, you know, easy to use as it used to be, and that's okay. But it can put out a ton of damage. If you get good dice, it will put out a ton of damage. It's going to be super strong against enemy vehicles, whether they're little vehicles or big vehicles. They're probably going to be hurting after a round of fire from this guy. So I'm happy that I have one. Who knows, maybe I'll take another one just because it's so good, but only time will tell. We'll have to wait to see how the points break down and how the meta evolves with Forge World included in it, as well as, you know, just getting used to 8th edition. So those are my preliminary thoughts. That's how I think the Y'Vahra is going to play in 8th. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and of course, happy wargaming.